So how do you identify all of these unacceptable things that are buried in your subconscious in order to accept them, re-own them, and ultimately let go of them? Okay, remember, the first step to letting go of something is to be aware of what it is you want to let go of. So how do you become aware here of something you're not aware of? How do you dig up and identify what's buried, what's just stuffed in the back shadows of your subconscious mind? Because although there are some things that most people have labeled as being unacceptable or bad, a lot of these are unique to you, and only you know the answer. Okay, they're unique to your upbringing, the environments you were in growing up, the experiences you had, and your perspective at the time. I wish I could give you a general chart here with everything that you'll find down there. It's like, hey, here's the list of everything that's unacceptable. There's this, 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 this. Dig that up, let go of it, here you go. But it doesn't work that way. Okay, why? Because what may be unacceptable to you, depending on your upbringing, your perspective growing up, might be acceptable to someone else. Okay, depending on the individual, different things will be buried down there. So this is something you need to learn how to do, how to become aware of what it is you're not aware of. Only you can figure out what you keep down there. And there are a few ways of doing this. The first is to think back to your childhood. Okay, as we've previously discussed, this is when you start labeling things as acceptable or unacceptable and when you start suppressing things. You come into this world, you need to survive, you need to learn very fast what is okay and what is not okay. Okay, you'll come in, you're like, whoa, this is okay, I'm encouraged, I'm loved. This is not okay. Let's disown it, let's get rid of it. Okay, so simply thinking back on your childhood and asking yourself, what were some of the things that were considered acceptable growing up and what were some of the things that were considered unacceptable growing up will start giving you a general idea of what you may find down there. Okay, make a list. If you take emotions, for example, ask yourself, around what emotions growing up did people react positively and around what emotions growing up did people react negatively? Okay, which ones were you allowed to express? Which ones were you expected to suppress? If you were having dinner with your family and let's just say you got really upset, really angry, and you started expressing that, was that encouraged? And maybe say everyone started joining in and it's, hey, how your dinners were, or were you expected to suppress that anger? Okay, did your parents maybe say, hey, what are you doing? No, don't speak up like that. Don't talk to me like that. Don't talk to your mother that way. Don't talk to your brother, sister that way. Shut up. No, shut the fuck up. Go to your room. Or is that what happened? Okay, what was acceptable? What wasn't? Ask yourself, what were your family values? What were your cultural values? Did you grow up in a family that valued creativity? Or did you grow up in a family that didn't value that and that valued, say, being very logical? It's like, hey, if you're creative, if you pursue something in arts, if you pursue music, you're wasting your time. You're not going to get far in life. You will end up poor, broke. No, I don't want a child that is creative. I want a child that is extremely logical. You go to school, you just stay very serious, you get good grades, don't focus on anything artistic, become a banker, become a lawyer, become a doctor, a profession that makes money. That, no. Or was it the opposite? Hey, of course, be creative. Pursue your passions. Here, we encourage music. We encourage drawing. We encourage whatever you want. Go do that. Don't worry about the money. Focus on just pursuing something creative. If you're someone who's too logical, if you become a banker, if you become a lawyer or a doctor, that's bad. If you're a lawyer, or doctor, or banker, those people, they're not really alive. They don't have something to live for. They don't have something that turns them on. They're like a robot, a drone in the system. No, you don't want that. Which one was it? Was it an environment where, say, fun and play were encouraged? Was that valued? Like, hey, go have fun. Go play. Or, no, you don't have time to have fun. It's all about being serious here. It's about getting ahead. While other people are having fun, you get ahead. Okay? Start just making a list and think back to, in terms of what people you spent the most time with growing up. Was it your family and your parents? Okay, I use the parents a lot here, but it could also be your teachers or your friends. If you're hanging out with all your friends and let's just say a lot of them agree on this one thing and you don't agree with it and you express your opinion if they all just shame you and there's that pressure of everyone shaming you and now you're like, whoa, I'm going to get kicked out of my group of friends, you're going to very fast tell yourself, hey, let's never disagree with the popular opinion. Although I don't agree with it, let's pretend that I do and let's try to disown that part of me that is not agreeing with it. It could be with your teachers. Your teacher's like, hey, don't speak up. No, you fit in with everyone else. Okay, can't speak up. So start making a list. If you think back to your childhood, it'll start shedding some light in terms of what you will find in there. The second way is to look for recurring patterns in your life. Okay, we all have some things that just tend to happen again and again and again. And we might just say, oh, it's a coincidence. But in reality, that is a sign of something that's in your subconscious. Okay, if you've ever said, why does this keep happening to me? You've just identified something that's in there. Okay, and this is extremely common with traumatic experiences, where if you go through, say, something very traumatic, what's going to happen is you're going to find yourself drawn to similar situations where you will experience that same thing. Okay, the classic example here is the prostitute, escort, or stripper who, when that person was younger, experienced sexual abuse. Okay, if you have the conscious, subconscious, here's a traumatic experience, like, whoa, sexual abuse, let's repress that. It was so traumatic, it was so horrible, let's repress it. And then, consciously, I moved on, consciously, let's go about my life. However, you somehow get drawn into these situations for you to re-experience that original traumatic event, okay? And these reenactments, if you will, can be played out in intimate relationships, work situations, any kind of repetitive accident, like, oh man, this is weird, or other, seemingly random events. Destructive relationships. If you're a girl, you keep falling for the bad boy, most likely it has something to do with your childhood, with something that is down there. Every time it's like, oh, consciously, I want to be with a nice guy, but subconsciously, no. Subconsciously, there's part of you that is basically seeking out these different situations or even creating these different types of situations for you to re-experience that in hopes that maybe you'll finally accept what you've been rejecting and resisting for so long. If you were growing up and let's just say one of your parents was very distant and you're like, whoa, I'm just never with that person. I kind of always feel abandoned. That might be stuff down here and viewed as like, oh, traumatic. That might be your definition of a relationship. And then somehow you keep getting into these relationships where people are not there for you, or people cheat on you, people leave you. If there's any kind of pattern, it's usually due to something that is stuffed down there. And you'll notice that if you let go of this, suddenly you will find yourself no longer drawn to those same types of people, no longer drawn to the bad boys, or no longer drawn to someone who will cheat on you. It'll change, but you need to get to the cause, okay? If when you're younger, you were shamed for being jealous, what you told yourself is, okay, I must never be jealous, must never show that I'm jealous. But what you'll notice in your life is, although you may have suppressed that aspect of you, you're going to keep finding yourself drawn into these different situations where it kind of provokes jealousy, or someone who's taught to never be angry and never be negative. And you'll see a lot of people like that on YouTube, funny enough, where they're like, oh, I must never be angry or negative, yet they somehow just keep getting drawn into these negative situations. And if you look at their personality, they're just too happy and too positive all the time. They're like, never be negative. And then you'll see them like, I'm always happy, I'm always positive, I'm always motivated. And it's just like a little bit off. And you can kind of sense the negativity, but if you tell them, they're like, no, what are you talking about? They've just completely blocked it off. And although they're so positive, these same situations that kind of provoke that negativity and anger will keep happening, And this can confuse people too, who, again, are extremely into the law of attraction. They're like, well, I'm always thinking positively. Not subconsciously. Consciously you are, but not subconsciously. Okay, so there is a part of you in your subconscious with all these things you just are keeping down that's creating situations in your life crying for self-acceptance. It's hoping that if it creates a situation big enough, you'll finally stop running away from this, you'll finally stop keeping it down, okay? And you're going to be forced to go back and re-experience these things over and over and over again until you find some kind of resolution, okay? You're gonna keep recreating the same feelings, the same sensations, reenacting the same fucking play, hoping that maybe this time it'll be different, okay? And it'll usually get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like, ooh, let's create a small one, hoping that, that person will accept this aspect of themselves. Oh, nope, they keep on going. Let's do a similar one, but a bigger event, and a similar one, but a bigger, and a similar one, and a bigger event. This is what happened to me going through that media scandal. It's like, whoa, where did this media scandal come from? Whoa. However, if I look back at the different pattern, like that pattern in my life, there were similar situations on a much smaller scale, obviously. Where, and this is what I realized, like for me, the self-concept I had here in my subconscious is I am the quote-unquote self-destructive artist / quote-unquote bad guy. And for me, success is not actually making it, but for me, success equals drama. The most dramatic thing that could happen, that is success. And the more drama, the better. So if I do like a little bit, like say I'm about to succeed, and then right before succeeding, I just pop it for no reason at all, and then there's all this drama, that would be success. Okay, so it would actually motivate me to become successful in order to pop it. And then you become numb to that. So you're like, ooh, become more successful and pop it. And I would do this, of course, with the media scandal, like push the marketing and then it pops. I would do it in different relationships before that, where if I was with a girl and things were going a little too nicely, too smooth, I'm like, there's no drama, there's no success. Let's pop it. And I would just subconsciously create that same pop effect. If I trace it back to me even, say, moving to Los Angeles, I could have done it, like I quit university to move to Los Angeles. I could have done it in a much smoother way, but for me, I just popped it and there was all this drama with my family and all at the time. Even before that, when I was playing, say, toys as a kid with, for example, my sister, we were playing like little action figures and stuff, I would always create the same situation as, say, me with the media scandal. Like, I loved being the bad guy. However, I could never make it because I was the bad guy. For me, the bad guy was the cool guy. It's like, oh, look at this person. There's so much drama around this character. And the person almost succeeds, and at the end just goes out and there's even more drama. Okay? Even in movies, I'd watch a movie and I'm like, oh, the bad guy's so cool. So it's this recurring pattern here signaling something in my subconscious. Okay? And it'll just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until, again, for me, it took a media scandal. I was forced to realize it and forced to dive into it and let go of it. Okay? And understanding this too, as a side note, what you realize is that the cause is always the first traumatic experience that happens. And this is huge. For me, you would think, okay, the media scandal, I need to dive into the media scandal and let go of that. But in reality, okay, getting to the cause, the media scandal is an effect of the original thing that I kept down there, that happened early on in my childhood. Okay? And it's not enough to just let go of the media scandal. I need to let go of that original traumatic experience or that original thing that I labeled as unacceptable. Anything else is simply a reflection of that original trauma. Okay? So to let go of it, don't let go of the recreated one, let go of the original one. And this is huge. Always ask yourself, not, what am I experiencing presently, but when was the first time I experienced these sensations here? If I sink into, okay, what happened during the media scandal? What were the different sensations? Replay it. Now I'm aware of them, but I then need to sink even deeper. Like, when was maybe a previous time I experienced those same sensations? When was the time before that? Until you really get to the cause. And that was one for me, but some other common patterns are just recreating different scenarios you experienced with your parents, but with other people. Okay, if you have a boss at work, this will tend to happen where you might project and recreate that relationship you had with your father. It's like you, your boss, and there's always like, oh, you kind of view that your boss as like your father or as your mother. Or one of the bosses will be your father and the other one will be your mother. And you'll keep reenacting that. Meaning, there's stuff down here that you need to be aware of and let go of. Or anything where you're just continuously pulled back to it. As I mentioned with my self-concept, again, being the bad guy, I kept being pulled back to it. I just couldn't succeed. I couldn't be in extreme perfect health because it would go against the self-destructive artist. So if you look at your life right now, what is the thing you're always being pulled back to? Is it healthy, unhealthy, successful, not successful? Look for any kind of pattern. And another symptom you can develop, by the way, is extreme avoidance. So if you take me, for example, with the fish phobia, I experienced that traumatic experience, like, oh my God, fish. I was not drawn to it though, but I would just keep, like never get around water, never get around fish. There's like massive avoidance, and if there's like right now in your life, a pattern where you avoid something, you just don't know why, it's probably something that's in your subconscious, okay? And this can also happen, to just kind of point out how nuanced this is, where let's just say if you succeed when you're younger and you're mocked and shamed for succeeding, it'll be traumatic and you will label success as being unacceptable. Even if success is, let's just say, a value in your family and it's encouraged. So if you're listening to this, you're like, wait a minute, but my family always encouraged success. Why do I keep self-sabotaging any opportunity? It could be that it happened in a different scenario and you labeled it as bad. Okay, so it is nuanced here, but by you getting rid of this, and this should add more leverage to actually dive into it and go through all the resistance, you get to the cause, you will stop recreating these same situations over and over and over again. You'll finally have free will. Again, we think we have free will. No, we're caught in these same patterns. And by doing this, you'll finally be free to live life on your own terms. You're no longer a slave to your subconscious. You're no longer a slave to these same patterns and experiences. You'll no longer be run by your subconscious and restrained and held back by it. You'll be free to really pursue and do whatever you want to do. Okay, so look for patterns. That's the second way. A third way here is anytime you are triggered. Okay, and this is a term that's become quite popular nowadays. If you just go on YouTube and search triggered, you will know what this means. But this is basically whenever you emotionally react in a way that's, disproportionate to the way you should logically react. So I like taking with success with women as an example. A lot of guys are extremely afraid to go up and say hi to a girl that they don't know. Now, yes, that's a scary situation. You're going up and you're saying hi to a stranger. However, the way that they emotionally react to that it's an overreaction. You should be a little afraid because it's a stranger, but the way that guys will react to that, it's as if they're going to die. I've had clients where I'm like, hey, go say hi to her, and I'll give them like a subtle nudge, and they're hanging onto the wall. Logically, you should not be reacting as extremely, and that's when you're triggered. Okay, it's when something just kind of takes over, you overreact more than you logically should, where basically something that's down here just acts as you. Okay, this is what Eckhart Tolle would call a pain body attack, where this is your pain body, and then boom, you just pop up, it just explodes. If you get really, really angry, again, in a disproportionate way, that's when you're triggered. Something just makes it pop. Okay, it's as we discussed before, it's when you express. That's when you're triggered. It's that little thing that it's that straw that breaks the camel's back. You can't keep it down and bang, it just pops. Okay, and whenever you ask yourself, whoa, where did that come from? Or whenever you react and then you kind of experience guilt maybe after reacting that way, like, whoa, or shame, like, man, I can't believe I did that. Like, I wasn't myself. Where did it come from? Your subconscious. Okay, that wasn't you. That was that part of you that's in your subconscious. And this can take the form of anger, rage, anxiety, phobia, hurt, depression, any kind of drama, any kind of addictive behaviors. That's when you're expressing. Okay, and understanding this too, anytime that you do get triggered, What this really is a reminder of something that's suppressed or repressed in your subconscious. It's a signal, if you will, that, hey, there's something you need to address here. If you're a guy and you experience that extreme phobia of going up and saying hi to a girl, most likely it's because there's something repressed. Maybe when you were a kid, again, this happens to a lot of guys, you get shamed and mocked for liking a girl. Shamed and mocked. It's like, well, you like a girl. So you're like, that's unacceptable. And then now you have to go say hi to a girl. You feel that same fear of death as if you're going to be mocked, just stoned, abandoned by going to say hi. I mean, it's crazy. It doesn't make any logical sense. And I've had clients who literally came back like they're soldiers. They came back from the war, bullets flying by their heads, like seeing people they know just die in front of them. And they come back and they're unable to go say hi to a girl. They would rather go in a war zone, and that's less scary, or they experience less phobia to that, than go and say hi to a girl. Again, it's when your reaction is just disproportionate to reality, something is deeply ingrained down there in your subconscious. If you get angry a lot, same thing. For me, here's another example. During that media scandal, there was someone who I worked with who did a few things I didn't agree with, and I was just really upset. I was like, that person, fuck that person. I got really, really upset, and I was like, you know what? We're working together. We got to get through this. Let's just, stuff this down, and we'll deal with it later. And then once the scandal was over, whenever that person would do one little thing that I didn't really agree with, like something that just really didn't matter, what would happen? It would just pop all that shit. And I'd be like, fuck that person, like over nothing. Fuck it. I'd be like, well, where did that come from? That is when you're triggered. Now, these triggered moments, although you're like, oh my God, I hate them, they're actually good, okay? Because they are opportunities, if you will, for you to access your subconscious mind, for you to trace them back to their source. Because on one hand, now you know what to aim for. It's like something kicks in, you're like, let's follow it to its source. And also because those emotions are so intense when you're being triggered that your subconscious is more, let's just say, at the surface. There's less resistance to go through because your conscious mind is just overwhelmed by those emotions. You can just quickly trace it back to the source. That is the best moment to dive into it and let go. Okay, whenever you're triggered, whenever that pain body takes over, whenever that kicks in, that's when you need to sink into it and let go of it. Okay, you need to open up to your emotions when you're triggered. And to do this, the first thing you need to start cultivating is making it a habit to start becoming aware of when it is that you're triggered. Okay, because you'll usually be aware right after. You overreact and you're like, whoa, where did that come from? You need to make it a habit to catch it before it kicks in. Something triggers you, it starts, bubbling up, it's about to express. That's when you need to zone out a bit, like tune out a bit, take some perspective and become aware of it. And instead of reacting to it and let it take over, become responsive. Okay. And again, just by taking perspective, what you'll notice is you'll pull some of the momentum out. And this will take some time. Okay. Usually, like you can hear me talk about it now. You'll probably have those pain body attacks. You'll probably be triggered and then you'll keep catching yourself after the fact, or you'll catch yourself before you're like, oh, I'm being triggered, but you can't. And then it just takes over anyway. So it'll take some practice, but after a while you'll be able to catch it and you'll be able to respond accordingly instead of adding fuel to the fire. Okay. And in terms of responding, keep this in mind. Don't focus on what triggered you, because it's easy to fall into that trap where you're like, say I'm getting upset, I'm like, fuck that person, and just obsess over that person. Or, if you experience anxiety, you're like, oh, it's the situation with this girl, like that's what's triggering me. It's like, no, that's you externalizing, and basically blaming someone else for another situation. And it's easy because you can kind of view yourself as a victim here. It's like, it's not me, it's that person. Remember this, whenever you're triggered, it has nothing to do with what triggered you. It's not about the external. It's not about that person or that situation. It's about what is being stirred up inside. Okay? And the trick here is to see and accept exactly where it is actually coming from than where it appears to be coming from. Okay? It has nothing to do with what's happening right now. It has everything to do with what is suppressed or repressed in your subconscious. So the key is become conscious of it. Instead of letting it take over, start witnessing it, and then take your attention off of that and basically off of what triggered you, and then bring your attention to what is being triggered inside and sink into that. Okay? Take your attention off the thing, off the story, and turn it inwards. Okay? Don't focus on the thing, but focus on what that thing brings up. And then that's when you go through the process of letting go of it and tracing it back to its source. I'm feeling it. When was the first time I felt these exact sensations? And then breathe into those. And as a little side note here, a trigger can be anything. It could be a word, a tone of voice, a smell, a sensation, a face, a place. You'll go to different places, trigger something up. View them again as like signals to let go of something that's in your subconscious. Don't blame, don't hate the trigger. And another thing you can do here too, understanding this, is purposely trigger yourself. Okay, this is something that I like to do during my live events, okay, Transformation Mastery Live, where I'll go out with you in public and we'll do these different social anxiety drills. You know, these exercises where you're purposely going to be triggered. You're purposely, something's gonna take over. An exercise I love is go out in public and stand in the middle of the street for say 1 or 2 minutes and start talking about some of the lessons that you learned during the event. Extremely loud. So you're gonna stand there by yourself in the street, people are walking by, and you're going to be yelling, so what I learned in terms of being triggered, and everyone's gonna be staring like, what the fuck is that person talking about? You do that for 2 minutes, you notice what starts coming up, and then you tune into that.
Trying to jump out of my shell, it's getting kind of awkward. The world is your friend. Everybody in the fucking world is your friend.
It's all about getting out of your head.
Just express how you feel, and everything will be good.
And to add even more leverage here to dive into this and get to the cause, when you do, you just stop being triggered. You know, you stop living this life of pain body attacks. I mean, that's what I noticed. I start sinking into it, and now guess what? That person I work with, whenever they do anything, I don't have those same emotional upsets, you know? And this is unfortunately how most people go about their lives. They're just walking around and they get triggered. And that's when they rationalize, that's when I'm alive, it's when I'm triggered. And then I'm back to myself and I'm triggered. They'll start avoiding different situations because they don't want to be triggered. Like, oh, you know what? I'm never going to hang out with that person. I'm never going to go there. I'm never going to see my family because my family will trigger me. That's a common one too. If you want to test it, go hang out with your family. That's when you're usually triggered the most. So get to the cause and now you can feel at ease. And again, it doesn't matter what happens out there, here you're still the same. So that's the third way. The fourth way is to be aware of any signs of escapism. Okay, and a good practice here is just to start observing any kind of habits where you try to escape something. Okay, any type of way that you tend to cope with whatever's in there. And you'll catch yourself, like say you're by yourself at home and you start getting a little bit bored, and then maybe you'll fall into this. Maybe you'll start being aware of this. So you start getting bored and you're like, shit, I need to quickly distract myself. What are some of your go-to ways? You know, for a lot of guys, it's masturbating. This is why there's that very popular movement online right now, where it's like the no FAP movement, like no more masturbation, because that's like one of the go-to ways that a lot of guys, you know, it's like you're at home, you're bored, you want to quickly distract yourself, quickly masturbate, or surf the web, or eat. Okay, whenever you have that feeling where you need to run, you need to do something, that's a sign of escapism, and that's a sign where instead of distracting yourself, instead of going to that go-to way of escaping, dive into it instead. Okay, for me, I mean, some of my go-tos is eating, like just eating to numb, surfing the web. If you catch yourself like surfing the web, you're like, what the fuck am I doing? You know, those are some of your go-to ways. So make a list, and whenever you catch yourself doing it, dive into it instead. Stop escaping it. And it could be anything, you know, from drinking, smoking, eating, watching TV, masturbating, socializing, sleeping. That's a huge one. Like, oh, let me just go for a nap. Let me watch a movie. That was another one. Let's watch a movie. Make a list, catch yourself, and sink into it. Okay? And it could also be very subtle, like even putting on a front, like putting on a class clown type of front is another way of trying to escape that. You know, say you experience something that hurts, instead of letting that out, you're like, oh, no, class clown front. Instead of going to that go-to way of coping or escaping, sink into it. Another question you can ask yourself here too, in terms of your childhood is, hey, what were some of the ways that people around me growing up went about escaping themselves? What were their go-to escapes? Was it watching sports on television? What was it? Make a list. And these can be extremely hard to let go of, by the way, because they don't bring you pain up front, okay? Escaping, in reality, like that gives you that temporary relief. So it's not like, oh, this is painful, let's get rid of it. It's giving you a relief from that pain. So you need to stop it, like stop running away from the pain, stop chasing that instant gratification, that instant relief, dive into it so you get rid of it in the long run, okay? Because although you may temporarily escape it, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and it will find you. It's best to face it now, and when you do, you'll stop reacting in terms of these like instant gratifications, short-term plays, and you'll start thinking a lot more long-term, okay? That's the fourth way. And lastly here, the fifth way is to be aware of and sink into any kind of fears, okay? If you ask yourself, what are you afraid of? Simple as that. What are you afraid of? It could be being abandoned, being alone, being a bad person, not living up to your potential, not being in control of something, not being in control of yourself, not being in control of your life, not getting approval, not being loved, not being safe. What is it? What are you afraid of? And then just keep following the trail of whys. Ask yourself why. What happens if you're not approved of? I won't fit in. Okay, what happens if you don't fit in? I'll be rejected. Okay, what happens if you be rejected? I'll be an outcast. What happens if you're an outcast? Just keep sinking into why, until you just can't go any further. And be careful here not to get stuck on justifying. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to be rejected. Why? Because it doesn't feel good. Why? Because I'm rejected. Why? Because it doesn't feel good. Why? Because I'm rejected. You're just staying on that same level. Keep going deeper until you can't go deeper anymore, and then sink into that. Whatever it is you're afraid of, let it take over. If you're afraid of being alone, embrace it. Be okay with being alone. Let go of your resistance to being alone. Let go of your resistance to being abandoned. Let go of your resistance of not being in control. Let go of your resistance of not feeling safe. I don't want to feel safe. I don't want to not feel safe. I don't want to not feel safe. Be okay with it. Okay, you need to end, once again, that running away from. And this is where you just let those sensations take over. It's when you do the process and you let go of what's buried down there.